Thanks for joining us.
Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast. You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today, we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. Everybody knows, but AOC, she has become a lightning rod. Doesn't pay much attention to her New York constituents. She's so busy fighting Israel and in the progressive agenda that a lot of people back home are feeling neglected in the Queens and the Bronx. With us right now is Marty. He's one of 9 children who grew up in historic Irvington, part of Westchester. He's an experienced strategist, investor, financial advisor. Over the past 40 years, has helped solve complex problems internationally, including England, Europe, the Middle East, Asia, the United States. He studied economics. He now has decided he'd like to be the next congressman. He's challenging AOC in the Democratic primary, June 25th. Marty, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here. You've got a great audience, and we're getting the word out. So it's a good service that you're doing.
How's it going? Because you're up against somebody who has millions of dollars at her disposal, gets a lot of attention. So how's the race coming along for you?
You know, people have to remember that in a primary or in any election, all politics is local. So you're going to have maybe 50,000 voters in the primary. Let's call it 25,000 people in the Bronx, 25,000 people in Queens. And if you think that going around with $6 million is going to impress 25,000 people in the Bronx, you're completely wrong. If you think that bringing Bernie Sanders and Jamal Bowman to a rally in the Bronx is going to impress these people, it's completely wrong. So I think the money really doesn't matter. And I think it kind of works against her. And I think it's also true with, you can call it fame. I don't think she's really famous. I think she's very, very well known. And I think that also works against her because a lot of the stuff that she's well known for are not things that the people in the Bronx and Queens really put any value on.
So let me ask you, what made you decide that you're going to challenge her? It's the first time you're running for public office.
So, my congressmen over the years were Elliot Engel, Nita Lowey. Before that, Peter Pizer. I was Peter Pizer's driver when I was 16 years old, and there were no car phones. So, Peter was we would talk about politics. I knew his kids, and it was something I always wanted to do, but we always had great representatives. Elliot Engel, Nita Lowey were really great representatives. And of course, when, AOC came in, and Jamal Bowman came in, you look at it and you say, okay, so there's a new wave of people, and let's see how it goes. I mean, this is America; it's reinventing itself, and some of them have been really good. I think that you've got some really good young representatives, but it doesn't mean that they're all good. And so, what inspired me is that I think Representative Bowman and Representative AOC have been terrible representatives for their constituents, and I thought I could do better. And so I just jumped in.
Now, what made you decide to run against AOC as opposed to Jamal Bowman, who's also in your area?
So hold on. So I did run against Jamal Bowman. So I declared first against Jamal Bowman because I was living in that district. And everyone was encouraging me because, in Jamal Bowman's case, you have somebody who's just not a competent congressman. We can talk about, foreign affairs and everything later, but he's not a competent congressman. So I declared on October 1st, and then you had October 7th happen. On October, 8th or 9th, I was in Times Square counter protesting against, the Palestinian protest. And then George Latimer came in. So once George came in, I thought, well, George has got a much better shot. He's a great guy, good candidate. But I'm up and running. And, if nobody runs against AOC, why don't I challenge her? And that was exactly the thinking. I live almost, I live closer to parts of the Bronx than AOC does. So I thought I'm just gonna go after her, because at the end of the day, it's the policies of radicalism that are really the thing that we should be debating. That's democracy. And then we should really be voting on. We shouldn't be slip sliding away the way we are into this radical agenda. So I simply moved my campaign from the 16th district to the 14th district. And, I was very surprised. We got, we got 7,300 signatures in 12 days. And
Wow.
That's when I really thought, we have a chance here, because it's not easy to collect signatures, but the people were very willing to have an option.
Now, it may be difficult to collect signatures. It might be more difficult to collect money to run against an incumbent who has lots of money at her disposal coming from all kinds of places. I love to see where that money comes from. But be that as it may, how are you doing financially? Let's talk geld, as they say in Yiddish. Let's talk money. So how is that coming along for you? What do you have to raise? What have you raised so far?
We never thought of it in money terms. It's not. I mean, I'm aware that more money is better than less money, but
Money is never a problem. Only a lack of it is.
yeah. One day I was sitting there by my driveway, and I saw I had an extra little plastic folding table. It's like a Rubbermaid table. It's about the cheapest table that you can have. No disrespect to Rubbermaid, but I thought, maybe what we should do is just set up our Rubbermaid table outside the supermarket and just, see how it goes. And that's what we did. And we took not having a lot of resources and not having a lot of outside influences. And, we just turned it into a virtue, because the thing about this district is there's an expression that people use in the district called Bronx 62. So Bronx 62 stands for the fact that there's 62 counties in New York State. Bronx has been the poorest county in New York State for 40 years. And if you go in there with an attitude, which is, I've got millions of dollars and you people are poor, it's just not going to work. But going in there with a plastic table and a cup of coffee and a notepad has worked out great for us. And it's worked well in Queens too. So more money would be great, but we started the campaign. I kind of had what I needed personally. And we've been able to collect money from, some friends and family. And then we've gotten some donations. So I think we've raised about $100,000 from third parties. If it was $1 million, we'd be doing a lot better. But, no one can doubt our sincerity. And we've skyrocketed in popularity in the district because we've been just straight from the heart and from the street.
So what are you hearing on the street? What are the big issues in the Queens and the Bronx areas that you like to represent, the 14th congressional district? Is crime the number one issue? Is it immigration? What are the facts?
I would say the number one issue is crime and our representatives' attitude towards immigration. And I think that the two kind of go together. So if you walk down White Plains Road, which is what I did when I moved to the district, I just walked down the street and started talking to people.
You had to move before you ran.
You don't have to move before you run. You don't even have to live in the district, but I decided it was a good idea. So I moved to the Bronx for 1 month, and now I have a place in the Bronx and in Queens, because just in terms of degree of difficulty, the district is half in Queens and half in the Bronx. They're connected by the Triborough Bridge, the Whitestone Bridge, and the Throgs Neck Bridge. And one of the things is, once you cross a bridge, your political capital disappears. So you could be a fantastic, politician in Queens. You get like no credit in the Bronx for that. You could be great in the Bronx and you get negative credit in Queens. So really coming in from the outside has been a benefit, because I've never pissed anybody off. And also, I'm not from one or the other place, but I did, just walk down the street and start talking to people. And I was really shocked. I would say 4 out of 5 people in the Bronx, when I finally got them to understand that I was running against AOC, they would say, "I hate her. Get her out. Get her off my TV. Thank God you're here." I just knew these people for 5 minutes. In Queens, it's been a little less emotional, but there's definitely a feeling in Queens that she's an outsider. She's not part of their machine. And the more time I spent in, there's in New York, you have community boards, and then you have neighborhood associations. And you go to these neighborhood associations and you go to the community boards, and you just listen to what they say. And then they come up to you at the end and they're like, you got to get her out. We got to get rid of her. And this has been the consistent feedback across all parts of the Bronx and all parts of Queens. Although to her credit, obviously she has supporters. I'm not trying to talk down that, she doesn't have her supporters, but like a big pile of money and a big pile of Instagram followers all over the world doesn't do you any good when you're at a neighborhood association meeting.
Can you give us an idea what kind? You said you raised $100,000. What kind of war chest does your opponent AOC have?
She has more. She has
a lot more. Is it? And how many more millions? It's in the millions, right?
I think she has $6 million, and I think she kind of overlooked the fact that she had a primary challenger, because she's now in a position where, her posters and her flyers are kind of like being scattered from airplanes, and people don't like it because it's too little too late.
Is there any debates scheduled?
Pardon me?
Any debates scheduled?
So we challenged her to a debate 8 weeks ago, and her response, what she told the Bronx Times, which is like, Bronx Times is a good paper, but it's not like she told this to CNN. She said, "I'm not going to dignify his campaign with a debate."
And she can get away with it. There are no rules that congressional candidates must have a debate, right?
There is a rule. Voters don't like it when you do that. And she has pissed off a lot of voters by saying that, because in addition to having the 7,000 signatures that I had, I went and got 5,000 more just so I could talk to the voters, basically. We have 12,000 voters who said they want us on the ballot. And she said she won't do a debate. Now, that speaks for itself. We never expected her to say yes, because I think she's a coward. I think her idea of a debate is to go on the Stephen Colbert show and talk about the lunar eclipse. Well, in politics, you need to be ready to talk to anybody, anytime, about any topic, and that's the approach we have taken.
No, but certainly she's not. She's basically ignoring you. She's making a move. You don't exist in the campaign, right?
Well, let's see what the voters say. The voters know we exist. We've got 12,000 signatures. We've knocked on over 6,000 doors in the last 3 weeks. We have our own poll as a result of that.
What does your poll show?
We're running 2-1 ahead of her, more or less. Now, having said that, that's our people with our T-shirts knocking on their doors, and so you get a little bit of self-selection there. So it's not an official poll, but that's basically, we're not getting feedback that this is a long shot. We're getting feedback that we're being viewed by the voters as a valid choice, and they're really concerned about her. So in our district, we've had a couple of things happen recently. You go back to the issues. Let's go back to the illegal immigration and the crime. So 2 weeks ago, these came together. So we had an illegal immigrant shoot 2 policemen, one of them point blank in the chest. And this was somebody from an illegal immigrant shelter right next to LaGuardia Airport. AOC did not attend the rally at the hospital. She didn't support the police rally, and she didn't attend the Shut the Shelter rally. Okay, so then this week, we had a migrant from Ecuador take 2 kids who were 13 years old with a machete into a park, sexually assaulted a girl. And then a few days later, the people in the city, saw his picture and they beat the crap out of him and the police arrested him. And then today, we have dirty water in one of the projects, and AOC is going to Las Vegas. So, she's a terrible representative of her people. People that we talk to in the district think of her as a terrible representative of her people. And just coming back to the money and the followers, I don't think any of that is affecting the race for who gets the most votes on Tuesday out of 50,000 primary voters. I think we'll get our votes and she'll get hers, and we'll see who
very
wins.
small amount of people vote in primaries. So the question is, who can motivate their base? If you can motivate your base, a small number will determine the outcome of your race and other races on primary day.
There's about 200,000 Democratic voters in the district. If you say 25% of them will vote in a primary, we already had our presidential primary, which is going to lower turnout. So you have 50,000 voters. We have 12,000 signatures already. We want to get to 25,000 votes. That gives us a shot to win. I don't think the money's a factor. I think we if anybody wants to help us out with donations,
we help. You can buy more media. You have a billboard, I think, went up to today, right?
So what's happening is we're getting support from groups who now see us as a credible challenger. So, for example, there's a guy who runs a newspaper called the Queens Eagle. I think his name is Michael Nussbaum, and he put out
Michael is a good
Michael
guy.
Paul said, "I'm just letting you know I'm putting out an ad against the Democrat Socialists of America." And I said, great, but that's money we didn't have to spend. And then somebody put up a billboard today in Times Square saying, we should vote out AOC and vote for Marty Dolan. That's money we didn't have to spend. And then I've probably had 20 major media interviews on, the major channels. That's worth millions of dollars. So in many respects, by having a kind of humble approach to our campaign, although money's always good, so people want to
always help, right? So it's
especially
compared to 6 million, it is a challenge. I mean,
we've been very resourceful. We have homeowners putting up banners for us. We have grassroots support. The key thing that would help us in the next few days is you want to really just get out and flood the streets. You want to have the polls have to be watched. That takes money. So, more support is always better. But I think we're at the point now where we've created this opportunity. And if I can just describe it for 1 second.
So let me just tell our audience, that those that are just tuning in, Marty Dolan is an experienced strategist, investor, financial advisor. He's over the last 40 years helped solve many complex problems around the world. He's running for Congress in the 14th Congressional District against AOC. You were saying?
Let's think of it this way. When we win on Tuesday, imagine Tuesday night. It comes out, we've got 54% of the vote. She's got 46% of the vote. Okay. Immediately, things in New York change the next day. Eric Adams no longer has to worry about the radicals. He can start to crack down on crime. We can stop zero bail reform. We can stop this revolving door of criminals running in and out. President Biden feels more empowered to run his campaign because it doesn't have to lean so far to the left. And people all over the world will look and say, okay, so the people in New York City, they're back. So if you think about it, we've got 50,000 primary voters who can change New York. They can change the United States. They can change the Democratic Party. It's not just a simple congressional election. It's a referendum on common sense. And there's so much leverage, whether we get money in, we get resources, that it can change everything. On Tuesday, we could change the entire course of political history if we just can get, the 30,000, 25,000 votes that we need.
So here's an email question, if I guess somebody watching us on YouTube. If American Jews living in Israel all registered to vote in AOC's district, would it be legal? And if it's for them to do that?
It's, we're going to win this election with the district as it is right now. The deadline to register, if you moved into the district, let's say you moved in, brand new, and you have to sign an affidavit that you've actually moved in. I think it was June 10th or something, but you have to have lived in the district for a month before the election. So it's a nice idea, and we welcome the support from Israel, but they could send us a check.
Okay, and by the way, you need money, you need geld, and people who are living in the district should be voting for you. The problem is 75% or more won't be voting in the primaries. That's a big number.
Well, we're pretty confident we'll do better this time around, because our message has been to the voters of the Bronx and Queens is, look, you can change the way things are in the world with 25,000 votes. If you think the people aren't listening to you in the Bronx and Queens, this is your chance. This may be your best chance ever to be heard. So we're out there talking to people. We're calling on around 1,000 people a day. We have, have our posters up. We're out there talking to people, and we're going to get a good turnout, and we're going to win this election with more votes than her.
Now, you mentioned that she was on the Colby show. Have you asked for equal time?
We did ask for equal time. We felt that was a violation of FEC laws, and
So what did they tell you?
CBS brushed us off, but I think it's interesting that she didn't go on any more network shows.
By the way, you should have your lawyer contact them. You should be able to get equal time. I'm serious.
We did. That's what the law says, but it served our point. We made the point because when she was on CBS, we were walking up and down the stairs in the projects talking to people, and nobody in the projects listens to Stephen Colbert. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Like, these people in the projects don't give a what about Stephen Colbert, and they don't really care about AOC either. They want somebody. Let me tell you about the projects. The projects are ubiquitous. They're all over the Bronx. When you go along the Bruckner Expressway, if you're not from New York, that's the big road that goes through the South Bronx. And these people, they're the heart and soul of New York. AOC doesn't do anything for them. And, they see her going to the Met Ball. They see her, going to tell the organizer of the Columbia protests that he's special and inspiring, and he stands for violence against Jews. They see through that. The people of the Bronx see her as a phony, and the people in Queens, it's more balanced, but there's a lot of people in Queens who feel the same way. They feel like she's completely gone through the district, uses it as a platform for her personal views and for fame, and to raise money for her lifestyle. I think it's terrible.
But she's gotten away with it. You're holding to the fire. By the way, do you ever stop and wonder why you were the only one that decided to challenge her? If it wouldn't have been for you, she would have been unopposed in the primary pretty much, right?
Yeah, well, let's go back to June 26th. We get some more money in, we get the vote out, we get the turnout, we change things. So what's going to happen on June 26th is people are going to look at what I did the same way they looked at what AOC did in 2018. You're going to find, if I'm successful, when I'm successful on June 25th, you're going to find another 20 to 30 Marty Dolans come out of the woodwork and say, you know what? If this guy could do it, I could do it. And then there's radicals who are in the city council, and they're going to have opponents. And there's radicals in the state assembly, and they're going to have opponents. This is how you change things. You have one person stands up and says, I've had enough. Let's get everybody involved. I can think of 20 or 30 friends of mine who'd be great in politics, but it didn't occur to them. So hopefully my success will, lead them to, think about jumping in.
So you're doing basically, what is your strategy between now and primary day, June 25th, to motivate voters to come out and vote? Because like I said before, 75, 3 out of, 3/4 are not going to vote. How do you motivate your base to come out?
You go out. You go out and talk to them. So you do 7 or 8 stops a day. We're talking to the Chinese people, or a lot of them living in College Point. We're talking to the people from the Bangladesh community who live up in Parkchester. We're talking to the firemen and the policemen who live up in Throgs Neck. You just have to go out and be yourself. I mean, there's no fakery, and especially in this district, which is not, so people are very modest in this district. You just go out and be yourself, and that's it.
And I think also a big issue, you like to refund the police, not defund, but refund the police, right?
If we can spend one more minute on that, I want to more than refund the police. I want to get them the technology that will free up their time to do police work. So, for example, and this is why I think I'd be a better representative than AOC or Jamal Bowman or any of these people. So in the United Kingdom, you have 50 different police forces that can arrest you. There's the Heathrow Police, there's the Scottish Border Patrol, there's 50 different agencies. In the United States, there are 18,000 police forces that can arrest you, and they don't share information. So what happens is when you're a cop and you run into, there's a complaint, they start going through the photo book. It's insane. And they don't share information with the New Jersey police. So
why is that?
Because instead of trying to provide police with consistent technology that is cutting edge, there's this defund the police idea. So, and it's a worse problem than that. And if we can just talk about it for 1 second. New York City and a lot of the major cities have financial cancer. And they have financial cancer because 30 years ago or 40 years ago, the leadership of the city made promises that are now being paid for by the current voters. So if you pay $1 in taxes in New York City, 30 cents of it is not spent on the city, it's spent on retirees. So if you go to the police budget, only 70% of it is going into the cops. That's why you have crime. Because if you're supposed to have 10 policemen, you only have 7.
And then those 7 policemen are handicapped because they under their no bail, they can get out, and there's paperwork restrictions. More cops want to retire now.
Exactly. So when you look at my background, which is my college thesis was on why New York City went broke. I've been studying this problem for 50 years. Okay. New York and LA and San Francisco, the cities, they all have financial cancer because of the promises that were made years ago. And now those chickens are coming home to roost. That's why the police departments cannot succeed. They're doomed to fail. And what AOC and the left wing of the Democratic Party is doing is they're saying, here, have a drink. You'll feel, but you'll forget that you have financial cancer if I build a playground. So they go to the projects and they give them a playground. And meanwhile, the buildings are falling apart. And they have a protest because the police were videoed being rough with a criminal. So the mindset is all wrong. What you need to do is restack the tax system in the United States so that instead of there being a 14% income tax in New York City, you have a 14% income tax in New York City. That means 1 day out of 7, you're working for the government in addition to your federal tax. Now in England, they don't do that with London. And in France, they don't do that with Paris. In the United States, we tax our economic engines until they don't work anymore. And then we wonder,
why are you proposing a VAT tax? I saw in your literature.
Yeah, so we have about $1 trillion, and then you get to the federal situation and international, which I want to talk about both of those. So at the federal level, just to keep it simple, we take in around $5 trillion a year of taxes, and we have $6 trillion a year of expenses. Well, this can't work. And $1 trillion of that is now interest income, which was only 100 billion a few years ago, because during COVID, we just spent the money like it was water. They spent more money on student loan forgiveness than they spent on education since the United States was founded. So there's going to be new taxes. And my concept is you have to move to a value-added tax. You have to tax consumption, not income, and you have to tax the wealthy. You have to find a way to tax the wealthy when they're have excess consumption. So if they're going to go to the Super Bowl in their jets and spend $20 million, they can afford to pay more, and then that can go into the pension funds to relieve the burden on the city police departments. And then you can take that.
You're not only talking about a city, you're talking about maybe a federal move to VAT.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm running for Congress and I'm not running for city council, because you have to do this everywhere. And by the way, if we make this proposal, we'll get 52 congressmen from California who are going to be like, that's great. We need like, and that's why you have to think we're in a Republican form of democracy. You have to come up with ideas that make sense for 50% of the people, maybe 60% of the people. You can't come up with ideas that are popular with like 20% of the people. If that's what you're doing, you should be in the, go in the media business, or like take Reverend Martin Luther King. Nobody was more powerful than he was, but he wasn't in Congress. He probably wouldn't have been a great legislator. AOC probably can do something else besides being in a legislature.
Well, I hope that she gets that job very soon.
Well, that's what the plan is. I'm trying to get her the job that she should have.
So here's the toughest question of the interview so far. You have to go to a lot of different ethnic groups and you have to sample the food. When you go to Jewish groups, what's your favorite Jewish food? I told you it was the toughest question of the interview.
I like the matzo ball soup because I'm a soup eater. So soup,
good answer. You want to stir the pot.
Soup is the fat when you're campaigning, you never get a chance to eat a meal, but you can have a bowl of soup.
So Marty Dolan is running for Congress in the 14th Congressional District against AOC. If people want to learn more, they want to get involved in your campaign, how can they do so?
Marty Dolan for Congress.com. There is a donate tab there. You're welcome to hit the donate tab at Marty Dolan for Congress.com. And that's the most effective way to help us now, because with 6 days to go, we've got all the talking points. Everybody knows about AOC, but all we need are resources to field the polls and to push out the canvassers.
And Marty Dolan, thank you for joining. I look forward to having you back on a future broadcast. Good luck.
I'll see you when we win.
God willing. I want glot kosher chicken matzo ball soup at the party.
You can name it when we'll eat whatever. My first good meal in a month.
Hey, thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to
Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Okie dokie.